call the King George County School Board regular meeting for January 27th, 2020 to order. Could we please stand to the Pledge of Allegiance? It will be led by King George Elementary School, and then a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'd just like to thank you for having us. It's always a pleasure to bring the kids out. These are my science club leaders this year. So I just wanted to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Vivian Patterson. I'm Anna Cox. And I'm Brian Hollis.
Thank you for having us.
What happens in the science club?
We do experiments, and our theme this year is Go Green. Go Green.
And this is Brooke Heim. She's another one of our leaders. They asked what we do in science club. Do you want to?
Experiments and stuff to go green.
Our activities this year are just centering on the play yard and keeping it clean and updating it, looking for ideas to improve it, and just fun experiments that keep them excited about science.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I have a question. So what is your epic fail science experiment? Like one that might have blown up in your face or some crazy thing happened? I think Brian has something to tell.
Oh, the birdhouses. Okay, you can explain that. That's fine.
We made birdhouses out of ice cream cones, and they decided it was a smart thing to break on us. So yeah, when we hung them up, they broke off the tree and just slammed into the ground and broke.
We found that less is more. They gobbed on so much peanut butter that the poor ice cream cones just fell apart.
Just fell apart.
Some of them.
Awesome.
Some squirrel had a really good picnic.
Yep, absolutely. Every bit, including the twine, was gone the next day. So anyway, well, thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have public and employee comment. We have the King George High School track team.
Hi, my name is Troy Spillman. These are Ellie Veazey, Kyla Brown, Matt Rose, and AJ Dale. These are all captains of our high school track team. And we would like to engage in a further discussion with the school board and members of our community about potentially dedicating our track to a very important member or members of our track family here in King George, that we just really would like to engage in more conversation with you guys and really do more for a very important person to us. So, thank you.
Do they want to tell us who it is?
No,
No.
they won't.
Would you like to come back with that information at another time? Is that, okay?
We look forward to hearing all about it. Do we have a change to the agenda?
No changes, Madam Chair.
Okay, at this time, we have some presentations. Budget presentation?
Yes, if I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'll just let the public know that each year, as part of our budget process and by policy of the school board, we do invite our local professional organizations to come present at this time of the year in preparation for budget. So appreciate both organizations being represented here this evening. And I'll be quiet now so you can present.
Hi, good evening. My name is Maggie Chapin. I'm the president of the King George Education Association, and I have been a teacher here in King George County for 22 years. I sent out a survey, or the King George Education Association sent out a survey to our members, and these were the results. It's a summarized version of our results of the concerns that our members have regarding the budget. First one is continuing to bring and maintain competitive salaries with surrounding systems. With our COLAs, the raises and step increases, we want to keep those experienced teachers and not lose them to surrounding counties that maybe make more money. The other concern is that sometimes our step increases are being eaten up with insurance costs, the rise in insurance costs. Bus drivers and bus monitors have asked me to bring up salaries for them as well, making sure that they are also competitive with surrounding counties, as well as continuing to replace old school buses. Additional staff members across grade levels to deal with increased class sizes and increased student population. Increase the amount of money paid out to retiring teachers for unused sick leave, because I know there is a cap for that. And possibly having a sick day buyback program at the end of each year, so if we don't have mounting 200, 300 days when it's time to retire, and then we lose a lot of those days when it comes retirement time. The elementary school would like to keep the Scholastic Reading Counts program. It's used as an incentive and reward to encourage students to read. Increase department spending limits, more money per department. Preschool services delivered in a healthier environment. Windows need replacing to keep air from entering the rooms, which makes it colder in the winter and warmer in the summer. Dehumidifiers installed in rooms so the condensation does not promote the growth of mold. Continuing to do something for those employees at the upper end of the salary scale. Once they hit a maximum steps, their salary is stuck there. Possibly do something for those employees every 5 years. For example, the teacher scale stops at year 34, maybe have something at 35, 40, or 45 years. And then for our retired employees, this comes up here, and we brought it up last year as well, having an insurance option for those employees where even they could come back and stay on the insurance plan for the county if they agreed to sub to make up the cost for that. The monthly rate for our insurance is $654, so it's a total for the year of $7,848. A teacher with a license or a college degree at $90 per day, they would need to sub 87 days to make up the cost of the insurance for the county. I apologize that I didn't have this digital, but I think you all got a paper copy of it. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Next up is the VP budget presentation.
You can use a clicker or you can use the arrows.
You can use the clicker or the arrows.
Good evening to the school board chair and our new school board members, Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you.
And our returning chair, school board members. I'm Yvonne Richard,
And I'm Jenny Shell.
and we're here to present information for the budget request from some teachers in King George County who are members of the Virginia Professional Educators.
We would just like to start by thanking you for all of the work that you have done in the past years, because as you'll see on the next few slides, our salaries have definitely increased in comparison to other counties, and so we really just want to thank you for that and to continue supporting those efforts as well.
So teacher salaries, according to the Virginia Department of Education, the annual salary for fiscal year 2018, the average salary in Virginia was $57,252. In 2018, the average salary in King George was $52,489. And for fiscal year 2019, the actual average salary in Virginia was $59,297. And in King George, The actual number was $55,137. How does King George County compare to the surrounding districts? As you can see by the numbers, Fredericksburg City Schools tops our surrounding area with $57,123, followed by Stafford at $55,801, King George with an average salary of $55,137, Spotsylvania with $54,668, Colonial Beach $50,430, Caroline $48,241, and Westmoreland with $46,234. Again, the average for Virginia was $59,297, and these numbers were taken from the Virginia Department of Education website. The link is included. So, as you can see, we're very pleased to see that King George is no longer at the bottom of the salary scale for the surrounding counties, but we do want King George to continue to stay competitive with the other surrounding counties so that we don't lose teachers to the surrounding area. VPE's budget request for the 2020-2021 school year, a cost of living increase for all staff of 1.6%. That would be based on the federal cost of living increase. A step increase for all staff with an average step increase of about 2%, which would be a combined COLA plus the salary step is about a 3.6 raise on average. And we ask the school board to please cover any increase in healthcare insurance, or if there is any increase, to keep it at a minimum cost to the employees, and then to continue to keep the average class sizes small throughout K through 12. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Yes.
Before we move on, because it came up in both, and Ms. Richard, I apologize, but one of your slides you had placed, you had the ranking as far as the average teacher salary. And so that is, for that given year, that's the actual dollars paid. And what I want to make sure is for the public is that while our salary scales remain just a notch, if you were to compare them to, say, Spotsylvania, they'll remain a notch below. They will not exceed Spotsylvania's. When you actually compute the salaries paid for that fiscal year, the average turns out to be what you have reflected there. And Ms. Richard and I had a little electronic communication, but I posed to her the question, and I don't know the answer, quite frankly, but I do know that a couple of years ago, this board allowed us to begin supplementing our teachers who have master's degrees. Instead of a flat rate stipend, we now develop a stipend that is a percentage of their salary. So as their salary increases, so too does their stipend. So I point that out as one aspect where I think this board has been very good and strategic about keeping or retaining a greater number of teachers. And when you retain staff, of course, the average salary will go up because those same people are still within your district. But you avoid the hidden cost of having to retrain, invest again and duplicate investment in teachers that we acquire. And teachers are very difficult to come by these days. So I think it's a real good, my point being, it's a real good investment to keep those average teacher salaries high through the strategies we put in place, and to not back off and do our best to retain our teaching staff so that we have fewer positions to fill as a result of attrition. So I thank both organizations. I think the data in particular is helpful. I appreciate the recommendations, and we will do what we can to move forward. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Our next presentation is My Stop app.
Can I give a little preview, Mr. Mayor?
Please do.
So I thank the folks, Mayor and Hillary, and is it just you two? presenting, or there have been several who have contributed to this, but this has been a project that's been ongoing since really last year. Behind the scenes, a good bit of work has been done to do some data entry in terms of our bus routing, making sure things were correct in the database so that this system would work and return value to our families, in particular as far as bus delivery and bus pickup. So we are anxious for this service to be taken advantage of division-wide. We think it, again, will assist families, particularly given the nature of our county. Oftentimes, families have to travel down a road, be it a private driveway or a distance to wait with their children, their students, or to travel that same distance to be there for their children when they get off the bus. So having a little bit more data about when that bus is going to arrive, and just improving our communication efforts with families, I think, is a win. And I certainly wanted to make the board aware of it and also bring it to a board meeting so that publicly it's promoted as a service we can offer. So with that, thank you in advance, and Mayor, take it away.
Absolutely, thank you. Good evening, board members, families, and staff. This presentation, as Dr. Benson has said, is about the MyStop app, which is now available to KGCS families. The Supervisor of Transportation, Valerie Pricolero, apologizes for not being able to make it tonight, as well as Jessica Ebel, the Transportation Secretary. So basically, before going to MyStop app, I would like to share some information about KGCS Transportation Department, explain VersaTrans MyStop app, and then show a simple download process. And then finally, the internal system for any issues that may arise with this app. King George County Public Schools transportation employees are an integral part of the school division. They are dedicated to their position not for the money, but for the devotion and safety of our children. The entire transportation department, bus drivers, bus monitors, mechanics, office staff, welcome the responsibility of transporting children to and from school each and every day as if they were their own. Their commitment is to keep children safe from portal to portal every day. They're dedicated to providing children a safe mode of transportation, meanwhile extending the learning environment outside the school building atmosphere, while they encourage students to be courteous and fair, minded towards others' feeling, learning mutual respect towards others, and responsible for their own actions. The transportation department has over 117 buses, which makes stops twice a day. The following is a breakdown of the buses at each school and the approximate number of bus riders and car riders at those locations. All these buses now are equipped with a GPS locator, which will provide real-time data to the dispatcher. This includes location as well as where and when, and how long each stop was conducted on their route. This is some information that I thought would be really interesting personally, as well as the board. So if you have any questions, you can let me know later on. This brings us to the VersaTrans MyStop, which provides mobile access to bus information. The app displays location of the students assigned buses, as well as the estimated time of arrival to their stop. Students can plan for late or on-time arrival and prevent missed pickups or being left outside in inclement weather. Parents and students can feel more secure knowing that their transportation is at hand, updated, and secure. I apologize sounding like I'm selling this, but fortunately we already have this. The mobile apps are for Apple and Android phones or a web browser as well. This should reduce support calls and missed pickups. It manages bus alerts to prevent students from waiting outside for long periods of time as well. Going on to the mobile download, I'm going to just show you some videos that we came up with. The following are some videos that will be available for families and students, which will guide them from downloading and installing to a very simple and basic use. The first video I'll show will how to download and install the Apple Store. This will be very similar to the process with the Google Play Store. I figured I'd just show you this, so this is something we're going to start launching to the public.
MyStop app. Visit the App Store or the Google Play Store. Search for MyStop. Look for the app that says VersaTrans MyStop with the yellow icon. Click on Download. Once it's downloaded, go ahead and open the app. And if it asks you to allow you your locations, I recommend using Allow while using the app. Go ahead and click on King George County Public Schools. Hit OK. The username is going to be your student ID. The password is going to be the 2-digit month, 2-digit day, 4-digit year. Once you're logged in, you'll be able to see different routes. Routes will only work within 30 minutes of the actual arrival and departure times.
So one of the things that the Transportation Department also wants to emphasize is just try to be at the bus stop 5 minutes before, because obviously there's time processing. In addition, families can view current and update information using the VersaTrans e-link. This short video will show you how that looks. I apologize for the raspy voice. It was right before I was actually sick at the time, so I'm going to go back and try to re-edit the audio, but just a preface
Hello,
on that.
KGCS families. This video will show you how to log into VersaTrans e-link. You can visit any of the school websites or visit www.kgcs.k12.va.us. On the top web banner, you're going to click through the arrows until you see the VersaTrans e-link. Enter your student ID number for the username, and the password will be blank or your date of birth, 2-digit month, 2-digit day, 4-digit year. Once you log in, if it's your first time logging in, you might be asked some questions, for example, entering your email address, and also choosing a security question to reset any of your passwords. Once you're in, you can click on Students, View My Students. On the bottom, it shows you where she's going to be picked up from, the time of the pickup, what bus you'll ride, and what days, and then the location she'll be dropped off, and the approximate time that she'll be dropped off at the school.
We know that any new software and technology, there will be glitches and a need for support. With that in mind, I developed a simple form that will allow families to convey those concerns to transportation without overwhelming their staff. This is just another brief video showing the form and its process.
King George Transportation now also has a MyStop support ticket. Just enter your email address, the student first name and last name, the student's school, student's grade, student's bus number, and any issues that you may be having. Next, you'll enter your contact information so the Transportation Department can get back to you. Once you're done, just submit and you're all set.
Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, Valerie asked that you contact her at the Transportation Department. I can also try to answer any questions in a limited capacity as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
I have some questions. That's okay. So you said this is live now? So
It will be live. We haven't pushed it out publicly. We wanted to present it first,
Okay.
working on a little bit of glitches, but the ideal is to try to push it out social media-wise February 1st. So I just want to plan that out. I think what I'm going to try to do is take a small group at the high school, release it to them in the classroom, see if there's any little bugs and glitches, try to work that out, and then hopefully push it out countywide February 1st.
And, sorry. And so, and maybe I missed it, but so it had the estimated arrival times and departure times, and does it show like where the bus is, or
Absolutely,
is
yes.
it up? Okay.
So the way it works is 30 minutes before and after that listed time.
Right.
Exactly. Otherwise, because they're trying to keep it secure as well for parents, so only the person with that login information for that student can see the actual bus. It doesn't show the route of that bus either, so, you know,
Okay.
God forbid that someone's out on that path waiting for his child, or parents trying to catch the bus as they miss the bus, because they really want to limit that as well. But I tried it out with my daughter. It works really well. And if it says anything, I'll say, you know, 7 minutes late arrival. And you can actually see it going down Route 3, pulling into your neighborhood. It's really cool. It's just like a GPS in your car in a way.
Well, I'm looking forward to using that, so.
All right, excellent.
So how does that eliminate the parents that are trying to catch the bus to get their kids on a different stop?
Well, in that sense, they don't see the route. They can only see the location of the bus, but it doesn't show where that bus is going. They disabled that feature. There could be a feature they could turn it on where it shows you the path of where it's going to go in every single stop, but they eliminated that so you can only see where the bus is with an arrow, and that it could be coming to you. So it'll say like, bus will be arriving in 3 minutes. Bus will be arriving in 2 minutes. You know, bus is here. Then there's an also option where you have missed the bus. It'll just say it on the bottom.
So what was the cost for that app?
I won't have that information. Valerie will have that information.
Okay.
But I know it's really well integrated with our current systems that we have.
And our current system has a GPS location for all of our buses, and it works off of that, I'm assuming?
It is an option within VersaTrans in general. We've been using VersaTrans for years as a GPS locator for our buses. This was just an additional feature that we could extend the capability of the system to families so that they could benefit from the system as well.
And then one more question. Anybody? How are you planning on getting it out to all the families after you do your little mini test run with the high
Through
schoolers?
social media as well as email, and then if we want, we can send out letters or anything like that as well. I know, Dr. Benson, if I can add one more piece, I know one of the things that they would really like to utilize with this app is it's almost like a keypad system. So right now, this is only tracking the buses, but I don't know what the cost is, but there is an option where every student would put in their number, and now you can actually locate every child. And if a child didn't get on the bus, you would be able to see that as well. So, I mean, that's a larger conversation later on, but that's another feature that this could really utilize and be beneficial to the county.
Any more questions?
I think it's great.
I do too. I think it's nice.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yep, very good.
I wanted to see some more videos.
Working on it in my free time.
How did you get the,
A wireless ladder. No, there was a drone.
drone, I see.
Yeah, I took a little drone on the side.
good job?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from January 13, 2020, organizational meeting minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the January 13th, 2020 organizational meeting minutes.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. We accept the consent agenda for the meeting minutes dated January 13th, 2020. Next, we'll move on to the action items, 2020 meeting schedule.
Yes. Madam Chair, members of the board, I think there are hard copies coming down the dais, but this was a discussion item last meeting to set your meeting dates for the calendar year. We've done our best to take the direction you provided last meeting and to flesh out suggested meeting dates. This, of course, is up to you all. If you have additional adjustments you'd like to make, then we are certainly happy to accept any direction you have. You will notice we avoided, on the original draft, there was some things like spring break and that type of thing that we avoided in drafting this calendar. So we've gone ahead and done that. And it looks like in the summer, you've got just the one meeting for the June and July months. So again, I leave it to you for any additional discussion or any additional amendment you'd like to make to your meeting calendar.
Yes, the 11th is a Tuesday.
So that's a little different to our normal schedule. We usually have them on Mondays and Wednesdays
So the
because of the holiday,
10th is President's Day.
President's Day.
And the other one, I think, is October 12th. I think that's Columbus Day, right? But that one's still on the holiday. I think that one's still on Monday.
It may also be the weekend when I attend state meetings to prepare for, you asked me to go to state meetings. So I think there are two times where we avoided that date. Sometimes I've had to come back to the board and say, hey, I'll be in Charlottesville or wherever for the state superintendent meetings. And we've had to adjust. So we've tried to stay ahead of that and reschedule in advance so as not to do it last minute.
Was this double-checked by Ms. Yuzerski and her folks in terms of the June and July meetings and hiring practices, and doesn't have any problems?
The only asterisk we would kind of put on it is that during the summer, as we fill positions, if we need, we'd request a brief called meeting of the board to approve personnel so that we can get contracts executed with employees that we're hiring in preparation for the school year. You could also add meetings as you need during budget season. I understand that the board business can be a little lumpy. You know, we're entering a busier time of the year than, say, the early fall, and you may need to add meetings or called meetings to do the work that you need to do. But these are just your general scheduled meetings and a proposed calendar for you.
Okay, so for the October 12th meeting, that's Columbus Day, correct? So are we going to move that to October 14th? Teachers at Tuesday. teacher workday.
I can do either day, doesn't matter to me.
So do we want to change the October 12th date? That's, because that's a holiday. I mean, we don't usually have, I don't think in the past we've had it on October 12th. The 14th? We usually do it on Mondays or Wednesdays. It's typically our board meeting days. Is there any reason that, so we want to change that to October 14th?
May 26th is the day after Memorial Day holiday, and
16th is graduation. And the last day of school is the 22nd.
What about it?
we don't need it, probably.
Just recommending that possibly, or discuss it, yeah, because school is out the 22nd, it's a holiday weekend. I just like to keep in mind to everybody that we can always add something if it comes up, or we can always take it away if nothing is there. So I think it's merited that either way we go, we can do that. I just do want to make let everybody know that if we do cancel or we do add, we have to do it within 7 days. What is the time limitation? We have to make that announcement. 3 days? 3 days. Which would make it even more difficult if it's a holiday. So that would have to be done by the 19th?
I don't think we'll need that.
Any other comment about possibly taking off May 26th?
I'm in favor of not removing meetings,
I'd like,
of not removing the meetings.
I'd like to take off the 26th. My concern is whether the staff will need that day or the time before that day for getting things finished up. I mean, you'd have to finish up in your classroom by the 20th, which would be Wednesday before. Is that right? How does that
No.
affect our meeting?
So classes, the last day of classes is the 22nd.
Right,
So this is, and then we have the Memorial holiday, so we're off that Monday.
right.
So then we have the meeting on the 26th, which is a Tuesday,
Which is odd.
which we usually have our meetings on Mondays or Wednesdays.
I'm out of town on the 27th. I don't,
I'm going to be out of town that whole week.
well, we're down to
Possibly.
3.
You're down to 3. So it's really up to you 3, I guess.
You know, said my only concern would be whether if we have any presentations, et cetera, then that would not give the staff much time before that. But it's not significant, so if,
So here's another issue. If we have the chair and the vice chair both out, what do we do?
have a meeting on May 26th.
I imagine you have to do some type of designation as a chair for the meeting coming up beforehand.
No, you just don't get to go.
We can certainly plan ahead, and any presentations or to alleviate any concerns, look at May 11th for anything that, from a time standpoint, needs to be put in front of the board, if that helps.
So I don't have a strong feeling either way.
Anybody else? TC?
I'm retired. Every day is a good day for me.
All right, does anybody want to make a motion with changes? Or not?
I move that we accept the meeting schedule as proposed with the following changes: eliminating the May 26th meeting and changing October 12th to October 1st.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Okay. The King George County School Board 2020 meeting schedule has been approved as noted. Next on the action items is March 3rd, 2020 primary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We discussed this briefly last meeting, but March 3rd is scheduled as a primary, and our schools will be used as voting locations. My recommendation then is to convert March 3rd from a school day to a teacher work professional day and make it a holiday for students, since our buildings will be, again, used as polling locations.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to
Close school for students.
close school for students, there you go, on March 3rd for the primaries. For students.
Motion and second. Do we have a discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. March 3rd, 2020 will now be a teacher work session. Schools will be closed for the primary election. Next on the agenda, we have the discussion items. The SBA Code of Conduct for School Board Members. Every year, we have a code of conduct for school board members that we will sign. Dr. Benson, do you want us to sign this one and pass it and have this one as the one copy, or do you have a harder copy?
I think Ms. Rinko has one master copy that you would all sign,
Okay,
if you so approved.
okay. All right. So I need a motion for approval. A motion to approve the VSBA Code of Conduct for School Board Members.
Yes, make a motion to approve the, we'll pass it down, we'll sign it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion is approved. Do you want us to do that now? Or do you want to do it in closed session? We'll just sign it when we're in closed session? After the meeting? Okay, great. All right. So now we'll move on to information items. Do we have any committee reports?
So is this our opportunity just to comment or specifically committee reports? Yeah.
Yeah, so did anybody attend any committees since our last meeting that would like to have a committee report? Dr. Benson, did you have something?
I don't have a committee report. I would just make note for the board that we have, and will continue to update, at the bottom of your agenda, you'll see a box there, and that's just kind of an announcement of any upcoming committee meetings for the board, just as a reminder to the entire board. Even though you have representatives that go to these meetings, Ms. Pincera suggested, and I think it's a good suggestion, that we put the upcoming meetings on the agenda for you and for the public.
You want to report on the
Oh, you don't have a lot.
Commonwealth Governor's School?
I'm sorry?
You want to report on the Commonwealth Governor's School?
Did you
Do
have?
I have a report? Or
I said, would you like to report?
that's okay. You can certainly,
Yes, if
you
you
have some-
attended the meeting, we'd like a report.
Yes, I went and, along with the superintendent. Well, it was my first meeting there. There was attendance from the other members, and they were had a preliminary budget, but they haven't discussed that any further. So when it is, I'll bring that information to you. That's about it. That's all I can remember.
All right. Any other committee reports? So I did want to just put the upcoming meetings on the agenda, or just so that we can look at it in advance, and then if anybody has any issues with being able to meet that, or if anybody wanted to make an announcement concerning their committee meetings, we can share it at the board. Since I am the committee chair for the CTE joint meeting, I'm not the committee chair. Member, thank you. I just wanted to mention to you guys that the February 10th, the joint meeting is a really pretty good informative presentation and meeting, and if any of y'all can make it, it'd really be worth your while. Okay, great. Okay. All right, move on to the FY21 budget survey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board. I think Ms. Bushrod is going to try to put this up on the big screen for the public. You have this in your packet, but each year, you've already heard tonight an example of how our budget development is a process. It's not a task that we complete each year. We begin before the new year compiling input from different stakeholders. Our two professional organizations have solicited their membership for ideas for your consideration. I too, as superintendent, issue each year an open survey to all staff soliciting their opinions about the upcoming budget, and I also solicit their opinions about the current budget. So in your packet, you have the survey results this year, and I try to then give you a sense of who is taking, who's participating in this service. And so the first slide, you'll see a breakdown of the, it's a bar graph. I'm stalling a little bit to give Ms. Bushrod a chance if she can pull it up or not, but anyway, you can reference it in your packet. But there's a bar graph that has the numbers of staff for each category that participated in the survey. Our response rate, typically we get just slightly less than 1/3 of our staff who as a response rate, and if you are into research, you know that, it's not too bad of a response rate, quite frankly, for a survey. But that's typically what we get each year, and I mention that so that you know that from year to year when we compare these, as long as our response rate is fairly comparable, then we feel like we can go ahead and compare the results from year to year. I also do a bar or a pie chart for you so you have a sense of where those that participate are employed. And so you can see from the breakout that the percentages correspond generally with, thank you, Ms. Bushrod, great job, correspond with our different schools fairly accurately, or as a corollary to the student population. And then SBO is, of course, our school board or central office, the preschool and transportation department. So those are the respondent groups and the associated percentage of participation from each of those locations. Okay, next one, please. So the first question we ask is about supplies, and it's really the prompt is that we ask each person to give us their opinion in relation to this statement. And the statement is, I have available to me the supplies needed to fulfill my responsibilities. Now remember, we have different stakeholders. We have maintenance workers, we have bus drivers, we have all sorts of different titles of employees. So our question is rather generic on purpose because supplies to one will certainly look different to another, but nonetheless we want to gauge how well is our current budget performing with regard to providing the supplies needed to do your job. So we're very happy to see that we have a 95% of respondents indicated that they either agree or strongly agree that they have the supplies that are necessary for them to do their job. So again, we use this as a gauge for how effective was our process last year at this time in building a budget that would provide the supplies our employees need. The next one, Ms. Bushrod. The next question or prompt is is as follows. The programs and/or services the school division currently has allow me to fulfill my responsibilities. Again, you'll see that we have a very high percentage of employees who either agree or strongly agree that our budget is providing them the programs and services they need to fulfill their job responsibilities. The next one is equipment. And this one, each year, it's not unusual for us to see a lesser percentage of strongly agree or agree. Equipment is one of those things where, I guess I'm hypothesizing at this point, but supplies are more fluid and perhaps a little easier to acquire. Oftentimes, equipment is a little bigger ticket item, and sometimes it takes us a year or two to acquire the equipment. And you also have the variable that, you know, the latest and greatest equipment is better than the equipment we got just a year or two ago as quickly as technology advances. So those could be variables that play into this response question. But again, we ask, I have available to me the equipment needed to fulfill my responsibilities. Still very high, 87% strongly agree or agree that they have the equipment that they need. The next slide, or the next 3 slides, I've shared with you annually, and I've tried to capture. We do allow staff not just to say they agree or strongly agree, but we do ask that if they either disagree or strongly disagree, if they'd please provide us with some written feedback. That way we have some qualitative data that we can use to try to improve in the next budget cycle, to try to better address needs that perhaps we didn't catch in the previous one. So I don't put these comments to the board intending for this to be your homework, that this year, your budget, you need to work to satisfy these items necessarily, but I really wanted to put them up there to illustrate to you and to our public that this is a process. And those are just some example comments we got with regard to supplies. Now, those comments then, the way we collect them, I have the ability to then query them out, and I distribute them to the different department heads centrally or principals, whichever are most appropriate, or whoever can most adequately address or field the feedback, consider it, and then incorporate it into their budget request for the upcoming budget year if it needs to. So oftentimes I'll forward to a principal comments about, well, there's one in equipment, I think about physics equipment as an example. And so I'll forward that to Dr. Boyd so that he can go to the science department and say, hey, tell me more about this physics equipment that you've indicated on the survey we have a need for. And then they can further delineate what exactly is the equipment, how much of it, what would be our plan moving forward to request funds to supply that equipment. So let's go on to the next one. Those are example comments we received. These are comments that we received, programs and services. These 2 are disseminated to the appropriate leaders so that they can assess them and then clarify if need and include them in the upcoming budget year recommendations. And then finally, the equipment slide, Ms. Bushrod, I think is there. And you'll see there the physics one, I think, was the example I kind of cherry-picked to illustrate the process. So again, each of these comments, the comments we collect then are fielded by the people that can best address them. And then we, next year this time, we will give the same survey, and hopefully then the percentage of folks that agree or strongly agree continues to hold at a very high level or even increases, because again, this is a way that we can continuously improve the quality of our budget, the end budget, in addressing the needs of our staff and our students. So that's really just what I wanted to provide you tonight, are the responses we got for this year, the comments that were received. And again, if there were duplicate comments as you go through this, I put them into one just for the sake of space. There were some other comments that I put on the last slide that sometimes we get comments that are relating to human resources or personnel. They're really not germane to what the survey was prompting, but you know, our staff took the opportunity to let us know something that they believe we need to consider in good faith. So I kind of aggregate those out from those 3 categories, but nonetheless, they're still considered. You know, Ms. Yazierski will take some of the HR comments or the staffing comments we get, and she can then follow up on those to see if we, in fact, have a need that's being indicated by one of our participants. So anyway, I think it's a good news story. I'm very proud of the fact that we It adds steps, it certainly adds work, but I think it's good work that we do because we are entrusted with taxpayer dollars. We want to make sure that we spend them prudently and that we make sure that we're really focused in on the needs that we have for the upcoming year and that those resources are leveraged against needs as in our next budget draft that'll be coming to you next month. So that kind of clues you into what's going on behind the scenes, the work we're doing to complete draft one. Again, I appreciate our professional organizations kind of pitching in the same spirit of let's solicit those who are affected and who must implement the services we provide by way of the budget to make sure we're doing our very best to address needs in our school division. Happy to answer any questions you may have or clarify anything I've gone through quickly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Dr. Benson, does the King George Education Foundation still have their little FoxSmart shop?
I believe so.
Okay. They're still working? Okay, right.
And I'd like to put a plug in it. They have a wide variety of supplies available. As I was looking through the comments both before the meeting and today, that they not only have supplies that are available, but they have wish list for teachers that if there's something not available in the supplies there, a teacher can say, you know, I'm going to do this for a project. Could we look for these supplies? And they will do their best to recruit those supplies. So we do need, and they get a lot of participation. I think obviously they could get more participation given the comments on the list. So that's something that we might give them a little maybe PR boost that the Education Foundation is alive and well and the FoxSmart's store, for want of a better word, is available for the teachers and the students and the teachers for the students. And it's a fabulous opportunity. And the giving from the community is increasing to that. So I think we have a real resource.
I agree. I think there's some way that we can encourage them to reach out to the FoxSmart program that some of these materials and supplies and construction paper, other things on this list might be utilized through that avenue. I don't know how we can reinforce that or encourage that or what kind of participation we can take in that, but that might be something we can think about.
So,
We do. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you know what FoxSmart is all about, Carrie?
yes, I
Okay.
do. I had one question, I guess, is that, and this is part of my ignorance, but is there a FoxSmart in each of the schools? It's just in the...
No, currently it's in the old CTE building over by the middle school.
Okay, but for any, anyone?
Anyone,
But
yes.
they will put together a packet of materials upon request and
Across.
send it to the school.
Okay,
It's
okay.
not just you come and pick up, but you certainly can.
Okay, okay. I guess then one thing I would say is I agree with that. I think that's all, those are good ideas to leverage FoxSmart and other resources that are available, but I mean, if teachers are like if teachers are putting their own resources into providing supplies for their students to make their classes engaging and enjoyable, I still think that's them doing their job, and I think it's doing them a disservice to not try to include that in the budget regardless of other opportunities for them to get those resources. So I think a lot of those, and I think I know I emailed you, Dr. Benson, about a number of things. And I know, and however all of that gets handled, but I think some of those things, like, I don't know if there's a way to have teachers, people keep track of, how much they spend, and, so that you could try to formulate a budget for how much additional supplies are being spent, so you could try to account for that in the budget, instead of having a projection of, I'm going to buy, 5 reams of construction paper this year and try to take a swag. Is there a way to try to put a number on that so we can try to include it in a budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an excellent suggestion and one that, in a little roundabout way, that is, I think, 3 years ago, I talked with the principals about the process, the local process they use to try to anticipate or to to plan for those kinds of needs that I think you're describing, so that we're not, teachers' compensation is austere enough. Placing another burden on them on their own, going and purchasing classroom supplies was really what I didn't like to see on a budget survey as a comment. So I've really asked principals, make sure that we, if it is, I get that sometimes it's too late. We do have a procurement process, we do have a purchase order process, and we have to plan expenditures. And sometimes, last minute something comes up. But that needed to be the exception, the way out there exception versus a continuous practice of going and obtaining your own supplies and just kind of, not having any relief at all. So I think our efforts have been to try to get ahead of that and to the best we can, make sure that supplies are available for teachers. I'm sure there are examples where teachers would come to me and say, I still do that. But I would go back and say, we then need to capture your input on that survey, or we need to somehow adjust so that we are then providing the supplies in that classroom. That's the tip of their spear. What goes on in a classroom, that's most important. I don't need to say that. That's really where we need to make sure we address needs first, and make sure we've got enough in there. We had several years ago, we tried to curtail, I guess is a nice word, but make as reasonable as possible the back-to-school lists for students. And part of that process, I remember, were teachers coming from all of the schools together into a room. I was kind of the bad guy because it was with the premise to try to limit what we were asking for families to supply on back to school. But the back end of that process was, at the time, to tell, Ms. James was running that process, I said, please bring me a list of what then is left off that creates heartache from those meetings. And then we then can look at our budget to see if we can accommodate those types of things, the hand sanitizers, the tissues, the things that were really a cost of doing business, in my opinion, and shouldn't be something on a back-to-school list, to make sure that we ordered enough of those as before school began so that teachers could go somewhere and obtain those instead of students hauling them in.
Bringing them all with them, yeah. Do we, and I know you put together the spreadsheet with the budget as we go forth, like in the next month or two. And I remember looking at it last year, but in the, whatever like the line item is for procurement, is there, I assume there's a set amount set aside for that? And then over every year, how do we compare with how much of that gets used? Like, do teachers put in like requests to buy it and the procurement budget gets used up and then they go out and buy more? Or does it not all get used and therefore the process isn't being used wisely? Or how does that compare? Like, how does it come out in the end?
Yes, by general category. So we're getting way down into, we can certainly, I can show you some examples of, from one, we can track using those budget codes, but that's, those function codes, we can query down to that level. Beyond that, then you're getting into actual purchase orders you would have to sit down and
Oh, yeah, no, I know.
by hand. That might be a little too laborious, but we could do some comparative spending, so to speak, at that, the
Line item or whatever. Okay.
I think once we get into the budget a little bit deeper and you see everything itemized out and what each school has, it'll be a little bit more clear to where everything goes.
Okay.
FoxSmart is not the answer to the supplies.
Right.
No, it's not.
No, it is,
It's a
but it
supplement.
is perhaps
It's a resource for.
It's a
a
resource.
good resource for last-minute needs.
You shouldn't depend on that for your school supplies.
Nope.
No one's suggesting that, I think.
That's what I heard, that, if you don't have it, go there. So our supplies, our standard supplies should not be a need that is on the survey. It shows up every year, so we need to address that and make sure it doesn't show up next year.
So in every building, the principal surveys their staff to determine their needs. So if there's a need at a building level, that needs to come to the building administrator to us for the budget. We can't predict how many pieces of construction paper a second grade classroom is going to need. So there's a process for that, and that's up to the building administrators to survey or for teachers to go to their building administrators and say, this is what we need, or this is what we'd like to have. And then they prioritize it or however they do that, and then it comes to us. But we can't.
And we'll see a big difference in the budget that each school sets I mean, I know last year it was vastly different. One school was 3 times the amount of another school. So, you know, I do agree with you that it's kind of up to the school administration to make sure that they reach out to their teachers and have everything budgeted properly. That's why I was just suggesting that the Foxmart, because it does seem like there's a repeat for some things. I mean, I don't think that we would give rewards material for, you know, candy and ice cream and little trinkets and stuff like that, but
We
it's just
certainly
another
could if that's
resource.
part of something like a PBIS program.
Yes.
It certainly is a supply. It's a needed entity in that particular curriculum.
Well, those funds can be, those type of awards and candy and all that swag can be bought with other monies, like, you know, the money they make off of the machines and so forth. I wouldn't put that into a teacher supply list. But
Excuse me?
I wouldn't put candy in a teacher supply list. Absolutely not.
Yeah, part of an activity fund, maybe.
I was pretty clear on that. So, but a teacher in Sealston needs to have the same thing as a teacher at King George Elementary, the same available supplies. So there shouldn't be, the principal shouldn't have the ability to say no to a particular supply if someone else is getting it in a division. All of them should be treated the same.
I agree with you on that very much, but I'm still stuck on the miscomprehension, if that's a word, that PBIS and rewards for behavior changes and things that paras and other staff might need for behavior modification is considered swag,
Well,
part of a curriculum.
I think I was pretty clear as far as, you know, I don't think the school board, the school budget should be paying for candy. Bottom
You
line.
understand what PBIS and behavior programs?
Okay, you can argue with me if you want. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so maybe once we move on to the budget, we can go into that a little bit deeper and have a further discussion.
I'm pretty set on that.
That's fine.
I would just circle back and end as I began in pointing out the high percentage rate of folks that are responding to strongly agree or agree, I think is a very positive sign for the work we've done in budgeting year to year. It was not always that high. I have to go back and reference it, but I think we were, you know, maybe 90% on a good year in terms of supplies as an example. So the fact that we've moved that needle a little bit in terms of greater satisfaction from our the folks that do the good work in our school division, I think is a positive sign. So with that, I'll close my part of this discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the construction update?
Okay. I have the 2 projects. I used to have 3, and of course, one was the playground at King George Elementary School, which of course has been up for some time and been used now for half a year, quite enthusiastically from what I see. I'll put a little ad. First, again, is our modular building that is at Potomac Elementary School. We are at a point now where I communicated to you in the fall, we do have a proposal from Wiley Wilson to conduct a study as far as configuration and to define adjustments or modifications that would need to be made in order to move the certification of the building from a B certified, a business certified building, to an E, or an educational certified building. They have submitted a proposal. The cost of that proposal, from what I'm told, is reasonable, but nonetheless, it is a $21,000 cost to complete that type of study. I think this study, and I think that the subsequent work that would need to be done in response to their recommendations is certainly going to hit the $50,000 threshold and would probably be most appropriately considered as part of a CIP, a future CIP of this board, and advanced in that way. So that's where we are at Potomac Elementary School. Do you want me to go ahead?
So I don't understand. So Wiley Wilson made a proposal of $21K in order to do the analysis? And then what was the 50 for? Is that in addition to?
Well, I'm sorry, the 50,000 is just the threshold necessary for a project to be considered as part of the county's capital improvement project. It must at least
Oh, okay, gotcha.
cost 50.
It's got to be above that.
Yeah, and I
So
I
that's-
certainly anticipated exceeding that amount.
For,
Not just this part.
right, not that, but for the construction amount,
Correct.
yes, okay.
Sorry,
And do we have any idea, or how can we move forward? Because I believe that that was pretty much pretty close to the last update we got several months ago. Is there any movement on that from the county?
No. We would need to, I mean, cost-wise, we don't have this cost built in our current operating budget. I really think that we would need to plan this cost and again, the follow-up work as part of a CIP item to secure a funding source for this.
For the 21K in the CIP, not in our,
The 21K plus the
Plus the fif-
anticipated renovation costs, the actual construction costs that'll be necessary.
okay, but we have to spend the 21K before we get that other cost. So are we going to put the 21K in our CIP for this year, or are we going to try to move forward with that on our own?
I would try to procure maybe an estimate, a professional estimate, just as a placeholder, so that the item itself, not necessarily the cost, but the item itself could be considered by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors as we work then to delineate costs. It's much like a roof replacement. So we may know from RCS the approximate cost of the roof study, but until they complete that study, we don't know the total cost of the roof. But nonetheless, we've put the roof with just an estimated placeholder in the CIP. Once then it's approved as a CIP item, by that time, we have a better understanding of what the actual cost will be.
So we're going to go through with the CIP with the 21 plus the 50 and make that proposal towards the CIP?
No, I don't think it would be 50. I mean, I think that building will need more than $50,000 worth of repairs and alterations to it.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I think it would certainly be the cost that we know for this study, but we would then have to come up with some type of placeholder amount that we think would be a best guess approximation at this point to put on that CIP, so that just the project itself could be considered by the Planning Commission, and then we could maybe do additional work then with them to define more clearly the total costs at that point. But your point is a good one. We would need to engage in this step one first before we know how
And
to estimate.
are we limited to that proposal, or are we allowed to go out
I don't think
and
so.
request for proposals from other entities?
I think you could solicit, we could work with the county to solicit whatever proposal you wanted to. No, there's been no, this has just been submitted as a proposal. It's not been, nobody's been engaged to complete the work, of course.
So those trailers have been sitting there for 4 years? At least 3 years, correct? Do you?
Correct?
Oh, what- so is there any way that we could propose a schedule so that we could come up with decisions, or at least say that we're going to reach out and do A, B, and C by such and such a date, so that, come up with a plan of attack,
I think,
of action?
I would love that, but I think we would need to secure the funding source before we could complete that timeline. I think the first benchmark would be inclusion on this year's CIP and presentation to the Planning Commission. If they were to approve it as a funding source, then certainly that would be what we want to do, is to set formative goals for completion of the project itself. But the securing of a funding source is really the driver moving forward. Without that, we can't accurately assess when we could do what, quite frankly.
Even for soliciting more RFPs from other entities? I just feel that that proposal is way high for knowing what needs to be done.
No, I think, well,
I know we have a contract, the county has a contract with Wiley Wilson, so I'm not sure how that works, but is that something you can look into to see if we could do an open solicitation?
I can. I think even that, though, if the funding wasn't approved for, let's say we solicited 3 or 4, RFP, or did an RFP to solicit more proposals, I think before you can issue the RFP, you need to identify the funding source so that you can follow through on the RFP. So I think I'll check with purchasing. I just don't want to say something this evening that would be out of turn, so to speak. I think first step would be to propose it. If we could secure a funding source for the project, then we could then work with the county to issue another RFP and solicit proposals against that funding source that was approved.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? So the study for the $21,000, is that just to come up with an estimate for the buildings or for the cost? Or what is the objective of this study? It tells us what all needs to be done and for what cost? Or are there other products from that?
Good questions. And I'll, in the fall to the school board, I sent a copy. I'll certainly, tomorrow morning, I'll send you a copy of this that delineates exactly what it would incorporate.
Okay.
But for this evening, just generally, it would provide a scope of again, renovation needs. You know, the building then could be partitioned as we need it as far as instructional space. But along with that, it's not as easy as drawing boxes on the layout of the building. You have to consider airflow, you have to consider hallways, egress, that type of thing, and factors that are associated with an E-certified building that we would have to satisfy code requirements, that type of thing. And that's what an organization such as Wiley Wilson would have the expertise to then draw out those blueprints, to then specify the scope so that we could create an accurate RFP for then vendors to propose work for the project.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make it clear that that $21,000 gives us absolutely nothing towards getting a step forward to getting a building permit. It just tells they're going to give us some information that tells us what we have to go to another architect or A&E firm and give them an idea what they have to do. With a budget, that'll give them a budget, so we'll know if it's going to cost us $50,000 or $550,000, or hopefully somewhere in between, of what the cost is. Because A&E fees are based off the construction cost. So we have to have that placeholder number in order to go out and reach for an A&E services.
But don't we have to have the study done before we know what all those costs are going to be? That would come out of our budget.
I guess that's a discussion. It's a very good question. I think, and that's that's the point I think Ms. Pincero is making, is that we are in a bit of a catch-22 in that you don't know the scope until you have the study completed. But again, we don't have a funded amount for this study in our operating budget. I guess that's something we could consider if you wanted to propose the cost of the study as part of the next operating budget while proposing the rest of the project as a CIP item. I don't see where that, I don't see any issue with that. I think I was just jumping in that if you kept costs with the building itself aggregated into one funding code, that's why I was aggregating them as a CIP item. But it's, you know, it's local monies to support this no matter where you budget the costs. So I don't, one way or the other, it doesn't matter to me.
I think perhaps to Ms. Pincero's point, in the vein of making forward progress, I think I would be in favor of putting the 21K in the budget for the next year, because I think maybe seems like maybe we'd have a little more control over at least executing a small portion of that versus waiting for a SIP to be approved by the county, because we don't know where that's going to fall on county priorities, right? So if we could at least do the study, does that not buy us one step forward?
Yeah, I think the only hesitation I would have is if you completed a study, let's say in the next fiscal year we completed the study, looking at capital projects, sometimes they're not advanced in the very year that they're proposed. You know, there are many different projects in the county that must be undertaken. So sometimes something that is proposed in one year may not be fully funded until a year or two later. So you could have a stale report. I don't know if that would matter or not. As far as the cost estimating, I guess it could be updated. Just something to consider. You know, if you do the study sooner, then ultimately the rest of the project is funded. Would the lapse in between cause any problems? Would be something maybe to consider. I do have the middle school to talk about, though, if you...
Go ahead.
Okay. So it's been fun watching the middle school go up. We are to the point now where we have students and staff occupying the two-story addition. That's the area closest to the softball field. The project itself looks very complete from the outside, and folks are thinking that we'll have, next year, we'll have sixth grade in there, but that's not the case. We still have a good bit of work that is going on inside the building, renovations, and the single-story addition on the side of the building closest to the high school continues to be roughed in terms of plumbing and electrical. They are now beginning the demolition of what is now the old cafeteria and kitchen, so that that space can be completely rebuilt in the form of classroom space in anticipation of the sixth graders coming the year after next. So that's just a general update on the middle school. It is exciting, and it's been fun to watch kids coming out of the auxiliary gym sweating after participating in a rigorous session of PE. They came out and said, "Well, does it work?" And they looked at me like I was, "The gym, does it work? Does it?" And, heck yeah, it works. They had a good time. But appreciate all the support of this board. Ms. Collins and her staff continue to do outstanding work, helping to coordinate with the subcontractor to define needs and to adjust in many cases. I know that it's never easy when you go through a renovation, but they have worked very well with the contractor. And the contractor, Branch Builds, has done an excellent job of coordinating with the staff to minimize any disruption at all to the school while they do the good work. But it looks great, it feels great, and that is the update on the middle school. Thank you.
Okay, next we have the superintendent's report.
I think I've chatted long enough. I'll leave it at that. Thank you,
Anything else?
Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, next we have board comments. Yes, I could say, yeah, I would like to introduce to us, I know your first name is Troy Spillman, that's correct, I'm sorry. My brother's name is Troy, so I'll never forget your name. Do you have a report for the high school for us?
So at the high school, we just had the play this past week. That was very good. I hope all of you got to go out and see that. Most of our winter sports teams are in full swing right now. We're going into the championship stretch with most of our teams. Swim is having their senior night on Friday, and the track team is hosting the district championship next Wednesday. So a lot going on at the high school, and I believe Dr. Boyd told me today to say thank you to all of our school board members and that we appreciate you, because I think this past month was School Board Appreciation Month. Or this coming up month, yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Troy. So I went to see Charlie and Chocolate Factory on Friday. I thought it was awesome, so it was very good. And my son, who is at Potomac, got to go on Thursday, and then he also got to go on Friday again, and he was like so excited to go see it twice in a row and to tell me how, sitting through a play worked. And he was an expert at clapping and whooping when it got dark, so he was really, really into it. So that was awesome. So I'm looking forward to Little Mermaid, I think, right, in the spring, so that'll be awesome. I bought my ticket or made my reservation for the CTE night on Monday, on the 10th, so I'm looking forward to that. I went, 2 weeks ago, I guess the 14th, to the Virginia School Board Association new school board member orientation training in Richmond, and that was very much like the convention last year. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Enjoy kind of meeting some of folks from or other new school board members and learning other perspectives. I think during the budget session, I'm a superintendent from Surrey County, I think. I think he also did the budget session at the convention in Williamsburg. And I know he said that I don't know if this is about a number of some divisions around the Commonwealth hold pre-budget hearings, like public pre-budget public hearings, I suppose, in the fall prior to the budget season, to give the community and staff opportunities to provide input, I guess, things to be considered for the budget, which I thought sounded like a good idea versus waiting to have, in addition to having a hearing during the actual budget, because perhaps that gives you more of an opportunity to gainfully include some of the feedback during the budget season the following year. I don't know if that's been discussed in the past, but I thought it sounded like a good idea. I didn't see much reason not to do it. If I can make a motion to consider that or to include it as at one of our fall meetings.
It wouldn't be a motion.
Put it on.
Board comment, it can go on an agenda.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. I'll learn. So what do I do? Make a motion to
After. It's not a motion.
It's not a motion.
comment?
Comment, yeah.
Okay.
Comment is, go on the agenda.
Okay,
Yep.
got it. And that's all I have.
Okay. Ms. Hawk?
I am continuing to hear really interesting comments, really positive comments, as well as constructively negative comments from the community. And I do hope that folks will continue to do that. We are open to the public. Our names and our numbers, the new one as well, is listed on the website, and we certainly are available, especially during budget time, but for other seasons as well. We really appreciate the NEA and the VPE and comments from the staff. But all the staff really need to feel included, and I do think it's good that a third of our staff complete the survey. I really would like to see more folks complete the survey. We do look at those survey results, and we do read the comments. So just a random comment from a staff member or a para or a custodian or a bus driver could well make the difference for us to pay attention to an issue that we would not normally have seen. So I really encourage people to reach out to your school board members, to your administrators. If there's something that you think, oh, I forgot to mention that on the survey, well, there's still time to mention it. So I do want to be positive about the budget. It's not a negative process. It ought to be a very positive project that we can use information that you all see in those classrooms every single day. So that's all.
Mr. Collins?
Thank you. Thanks to the KGEA and also the VPE. We do read those comments. We do pay attention to those comments. For the last 6 years, we've worked hard on the salary adjustments. For the last 6 years, there's been salary adjustments. 1 year was really big, but every year. My recommendation at budget time will be the 1.6 COLA and the step increase. For the last 2 years, our health care has stayed the same, and I'm concerned that that's going to be problematic. Also, again, caution everyone that, again, there's only so much money in the county budget, and it's going to be another tight year. There's been some added employees this year for our special needs that we continue to make sure that that is taken care of. But there's a lot of things we need to pay attention to, and it's going to be a little tougher this year probably than most. The deficit with the mess halls, where the cafeteria funds, cafeterias.
10-4.
With the cafeteria funds, are we going to be able to include that or start paying down on that? Maybe think about it for the budget season coming up. It's starting to get bigger and bigger, except for one school which got paid by a church, paid their debt off. So.
You're talking about student debt?
Mm-hmm. So that continually grows and grows, and so we're gonna have problems with that. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, Ms. Hawk suggested it about the school list and the schools paying for those supplies, the ones that they shouldn't be on a list for students to buy. And likewise, I don't think that teachers should be buying all these supplies out of their personal money. So I think we need to address some of that in the upcoming budget cycle too. Thank you.
Ms. Tolliver?
I don't have much to add, except I appreciate both professional organizations presenting their requests and concerns and thoughts tonight. And It would not have been the same if Ms. Lewis didn't show up, so now we know it's formally to go. First that it was here, I know.
Okay, I too would like to thank KGEA and VPA for coming out and doing your presentation. It was very informative. And I just would like to encourage all of the staff to come out for our budget meetings, also the board supervisor meetings, and then of course the big one when we have our joint meeting together. I think that it was a big impact last year with all the staff that came out. We have a new board of supervisor board, that 2 new members. And it's just going to be interesting to see how things play out. I know that they have a lot on their plate. They want to spend a lot of money, and they have no money. And I just want to make sure that, we are up there at the top, because I think that we are the foundation of the community for economic development. And I think the more support we have from our school systems and our faculty and staff, they're going to see that more. So kudos to the ones that are here. If everybody else can just reach out and do a rally to get more of you here for all the future meetings. Also, since the supplies seem to be a big hot topic here tonight, I know last year I remember that it was a lump sum. And Dr. Benson, I don't know if there's some way where we can maybe get just a breakdown, not a formal breakdown, but maybe a breakdown from the schools to give us a better idea of where those supply funds go to. And see how they're dispersed. I'm not sure I can see that that's going to be a question in the future.
We can certainly ask for that as part of the process. The work we're doing right now is to get a draft in front of you. So we'd want to dedicate our time to making sure we get that draft completed in time for you. Once we get into that, then we can begin to, if we need to further delineate some of the figures that we have in front of you, we can certainly do that. And you all know, and you'll get to know the process we use. We use for the stuff part of our budget, we use a tool that we've kind of nicknamed the Budget Builder for probably the last 6 or 7 years, where each entity, to the best they can, they will put a description with a proposed dollar amount next to that. So you'll have that data available to you. How far or how granular we want to get, I'll just have to gauge from you all as a board. But yeah, I think I'm proud of our process. I know that, when I'm not in the room, I'm sure things are said that it's more work than, but I think it's important work we do. And I think that when it comes time to present a budget and folks can access, and I remember a couple of years ago, we were, when we were able to answer a question with, it's all right here, in this document or in this document, and it's posted publicly for you to see, that helped, I think, to build some trust with our community, that they could see down to a very granular level what the proposals were in terms of spending the funds that are allocated to us. So I don't think that'll be much problem getting you that data. But as we get into it, if we can clearly identify what exactly are we looking for, that'll be helpful.
I just know that last year, I think one school was like $10,000 in supplies, and another school was, $20,000 in supplies. What does that supplies mean? Paper, scissors, classroom supplies, PMSI, PBISI, whatever. Sorry, yes, PBI. I work for the Navy, and I can't stand acronyms anymore. Okay, so whatever. Trinkets and behavior supply. Okay, those. Positive behavior support, I would rather use that, items, and not necessarily itemized out by dollar amount, but maybe by percentage amount, so that we have an understanding of why. I mean, I know we had 2 elementary schools, and their supply list or budget number was vastly different, and so maybe there's some areas where some schools are falling a little bit short in supplying that, and that would just help us a little bit more to see where we need to maybe shuffle money around a little bit. That's all I'm asking. I think that's all for my board comment. Do we have a motion to go into closed meeting?
I have a revised motion.
Oh, is there any more comments? Okay.
I move that pursuant to State Code Section 2.2-3711A1 for the purpose of discussion, consideration of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, substitutes, stipends, and resignation of employees of the school board, and that pursuant to State Code Section 2.2-3711A6, Discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, or if made public initially, the financial interest of the governmental unit would be adversely affected, that we go into closed session.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're now in closed session. To move to open session. Uncertified?
Somebody,
I move that the King George County School Board return to open session and certify that pursuant to State Code 2.2-3712.d, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business meeting matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the public body.
Certified.
Certify.
Any discussion? Did I do that here?
all those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
I have to certify, don't I?
Action resulting from closed session.
Action resulting from closed session?
I move the major personnel as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 What do I say now? End of the meeting? We're adjourned. We're now.